Hello guys, welcome back. And in this lesson, we are going to write our last test for for authentication, which is the logout test. So public function say test user logout user underscore logout. So when you think of it, is that number one, for the user to be logged out, we need to log him in and then log out so that we can be able to know if the logout is working on properly. So what of course we need now, we need to test that the user, for example, has logged in like this. But now for us to know that the user has logged in, remember on the login method, we are returning this response here. And this response has the token. So we need to take the token and use it to log the user out and then validate if user has any token in the database. If he has any token in the database and we have logged him out, then we know that there is a problem with the login, the logout method. But if we have logged him out and there is no token in the database, then we know that the logout method works out the way we expected. So here, what we are going to do, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a method here. Let's call this method login. So this method will just basically be used to log in the user and return the required data, the required response. In our case, because we are using this data, and later on we can be able to see how we can move this to be used in a trade. So I'm going to cut this here, go inside the login here. I'm going to paste this and I'm going to return this guy here. All right. And so now on our login method, what we can do is that we can say this login to call the login method which will return the response, and then we can assert the response the way we want. So that is it. And now for the logout, now we want to get the auth data, which will be basically from the login method. So this login, and then what we want is that we want to send a logout request with this login token so that the user can be logged out. All right. So we say this and we'll say post JSON, and we want to go to API slash logout like this. And then the next one will be that we want to send this with headers. All right. Like this, and this headers takes an array. So the first thing that we want to pass here, if you can remember, let me just pull up my tool here, go to HTTP client. You want to pass this application JSON. So if there is any error, then it works like a normal HTTP request and returns a JSON response. So I'm going to paste this here, and this needs to be in quotation, this needs to be an array like this, and then this also needs to be in quotation like this. And then our next guy, of course, will need to be authorization. So I'll say authorization like this, and for the authorization needs to be a bearer space, and then we can attach our token here. So I'll do that, and then I can say dot. And since this auth now returns with the token, and the token is a key here on this auth array, and then there we go. So now we have logged out the user, but now we need to check. Number one, we need to check that this user does not have the tokens. So we can assert count. Can assert count. Where is count? Assert count, and we can see that the count for the user tokens like this should be 0. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And now we need to get this user that we have logged in, and of course our user is just the same user that we are using since register, but because we are registering the user, we are logging in with the same user, so it is just simple as this to get the user. So we can just say user, and we can say, okay, to say user, and I need to say where, probably the email is our guy who is, let me see, just copy this test email, right? Let's use that one, and then we need to grab the first guy like this, and then we need, of course, to assign this to a user variable like this, and that is it. And then now once we have asserted that the user token is not there, we can now assert our response. So we can say this is response like this. We can now say that our response, we can assert status, and the status that we want here, I believe it is 200. Let me just confirm this on logout. You can see the status is 200, and we also can say that the JSON structure that we want it to have a message, of course, the logout message that we did send. So you can have something like that. And then lastly, now on our logout, since these things will be tested from register, login, the test will run like that. So we can move now we can just delete our user here from the login, and then we can delete them. We can delete the user now from the logout here. So once we have logged those user out, we can delete the user here. And then one last thing that we can do is that we can refresh the database by saying, I believe there is refresh application or refresh database. Let's see. Okay, refresh application. Let's use this one. All right. That has been quite some work, but I believe you've been able to understand. We log in the user, we get the bearer token, we pass into the post request for logout, and then we check if the user token are not there, and then we check also the response status. If it is 200, then we delete that user, and then we refresh the application. Maybe one last thing that I suppose maybe we need to do is I think we need to use this with headers before the post. So I need to cut this and paste this guy here and use him like that. And then I'll remove this. I believe it ought to be something like that. So yeah, we are now good to go. Let us test our. And so now when I run my test here, you can see they all passed, which is beautiful. So now if I go inside my authentication controller, and for example, I just comment this line for the logout for deleting the user token, and I try to run my test now. Let us see what we get here. As you can see, our guy for the logout fails, and that is a good sign. Now we have all our tests running to make sure that everything is working fantastic before we push to production and everything. So let me just revert back and run this again. And now when I run my test again, we are good to go. And that is it, guys.